Good morning, friends. My name is Yashwant Kanetkar, and today we plan to understand one very important concept in Java programming, namely the this reference. And what better way other than creating a Java program which exemplifies the usage of this reference. So let's try to do that. We will begin with a class called EX present inside a package called sample. Within this class EX, we have a private int I and a private float a. Then we have a public class sample, in which we naturally propose to make use of class EX. So inside this class sample, we will have main. When I say main and dot, it means public static void main string args. So that string args is to be assumed. And then I would create a new EX object by saying EX E1 equal to new EX. The way I have created one object, I can create one more object by saying EX E2 equal to new EX. So two objects we have created. And then we are going to call the setData function and pass to it 5 and 5.5f. I am making the call using the E1 object. In setData, whatever has been passed is being received in x and y. And all that we would do is, we would assign these x and y to I and a. So we are basically filling the values inside the object by calling this setData method. Now question here is that if I make a call to setData by saying E2, that time 10 and 10.5 would be passed and they would get collected into x and y and they would be assigned to I and a. So what happens here remains same whether the call happens through the E1 object or whether it happens through the E2 object. That brings us to a larger question as to whether these I and a, are they belonging to the first object or the second object? Common answer that people give is that, well, when using E1, when you land into setData, these are I and a belonging to the object pointed to by E1. Whereas when you make a call to setData using E2, that time these I and a are the ones that belong to the object to which E2 is pointing. So based on using which reference are we trying to reach setData, appropriately I and a of the first or the second object are considered. You ask them, how does this happen? Well, then they say it happens automatically. Automatic, in my opinion, is a very dangerous word. Believe me, in programming nothing happens automatically. There is always a logic at work. When you don't understand, you say it's happening automatically. In reality, what is happening is very interesting. When you are making a call to setData, it seems that we are passing two parameters to setData, an integer and a float. But in reality, what gets passed to setData is not only 5 and 5.5 in the first call or 10 and 10.5 in the next call. What additionally also gets passed is E1 and E2. And what do E1 and E2 contain? Well, E1 and E2 contain nothing but the addresses of these objects. Objects we know are always created on the heap and objects are always nameless. E1 and E2 are variables that are going to get created on the stack. And they would point where? To wherever the objects are present in the heap. So objects are always nameless, that is fundamental. Don't say E1 is an object or E2 is an object. E1 and E2 are what? References to the object. Objects themselves can never have name. So you are now convinced that to setData, what is being passed is E1 and E2, means references of the two objects are also being passed in the two calls. If I am passing three parameters from here, naturally in setData I got to collect them into three. There has to be a match between number of arguments that you pass and number of arguments that you collect. So this call to setData or this definition of setData is also modified by the compiler into something which looks like this. Ex final this int x float y. So 5 and 5.5 or 10 or 10.5 get collected in xy, that's no problem. But E1 or E2 that I pass gets collected into a reference known as a this reference. It is a EX this, means it's a reference of the type EX. And final is indicating that value present in this cannot change during execution of the set data method. So if this is pointing to the first object, throughout the execution of the set data method, it will continue to point to the first object. In the second call, if this contains address of the second object, then throughout the execution of set data during the second call, this will always point to the second object. Third change that the compiler makes is when I say IA, it internally converts it into this dot I equal to X and this dot A is equal to Y. I don't have to do this. I don't have to pass E1, E2. I don't have to collect into this. I will write code the way I have written it here, the way I have written it here, and the way I have written it here. This will get changed into this form, this will get changed into this form, and this one will get changed into this form, courtesy the compiler. I don't do this, compiler does this for me. And that is the reason why I am able to say that I and A are the ones that belong to object pointed to by E1 or the object pointed to by E2. When the first call is made, this will contain 400. At 400, which I and A are present? These I and A. In the second call, this will contain 500 because what are you passing? You are passing E2. E2 contains what? Address of the second object. So this would contain what? 500. That is why when I say I and A here, these are whose I and A in the second call? I and A of the second object. That is the mechanism that is at work. Many Java programmers don't know this. That should not happen in your case. You must know thoroughly well how is it able to distinguish between first and the second objects within the set data method. What works with set data works with absolutely any other method within the class. Tomorrow in place of set data you have get data or print data. Even there this pointer or this reference will be at work. A few things that you must remember about this pointer or this reference are as follows. Its usage is optional. We need not use it, but it is indeed at work for every single method. It is a constant pointer or a constant reference. It cannot be modified during execution of set data. That is why there is a word final there indicating that it's final. It cannot change during the execution of that particular call. Lastly, it dies the moment control goes back from set data. It is born when the next call to set data happens. So it is alive only for that particular call, dies when you go back from that particular method. That is how this reference works. Important concept, not known to many Java programmers, now known to you. So you are definitely on the right path. Goodbye and good luck.